Next item is public participation. Dr. Joyner and Dr. White.
Dr. White, could you make sure that people line up so that we don't have to spend too much time with people coming up? And
Nope.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to invite the public to comment. You actually have a time of 3 minutes. We're respectfully requesting that you not call anybody's name. And when I say your time is up, you should finish your sentence. So we're ready, Dr. White.
Hey,
You're muted.
the main line is on. Erin Marchand, Taisha Baez, Ife Waters, in that order. You can line up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you may begin.
Erin Mashad Co-op High School. On Friday, March 8th, 2024, New Haven Public Schools held their 4th annual SEL Day of Hope, Healing, and Happiness, which offered all NHPS students, staff, and families multiple activities centered around social, emotional learning, and overall well-being. I applaud the efforts of Tiffany Jackson, the Executive Director of Student Services, Monica Abbott, and the entire SEL team, as well as all the presenters for organizing this important event, one which examines and fosters the whole child. As described by NHPS, social emotional learning is the process through which young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. I believe that the district should focus on SEL every day for every student in every subject in every school. Social emotional learning should be an academic cornerstone beginning in pre-K and continuing into high school, where, in my opinion, it's often abandoned and overlooked. Being a teen is hard. Our teenage years are extremely formative, awkward, and uncomfortable. Teens are learning new things about themselves every day, and with all that change comes a lot of fear, uncertainty, and self-consciousness. There are physical, psychological, and social changes, and when one adds the recent upheaval in our world, a worldwide lockdown, a pandemic, and more students using social media at higher rates, wars and conflicts, climate change, and economic instability, it's even more difficult to feel safe and secure. Being a teen who identifies as LGBTQ+ is even harder. These young people's needs are often overlooked, and they may suffer more frequent microaggressions and bullying. LGBTQ+ students, whether or not they are out to themselves, their families, or their peers, have an even more challenging time coming to terms with who they are as they realize they can't meet the impossible and toxic standards society has set for gender, sexuality, and beyond. Social emotional learning can be an anchor during this time of intense change and instability. It underscores how each individual student has value, strength, challenges, choices, and a vital role in playing a positive community, whether at work, school, or at home. I'm sure everyone will agree that social emotional learning is essential in young people's growth and essential to the safety and well-being of every child. Most important goal for all of us in the NHPS school community should be to have a safe environment for every student. If a child does not feel safe at school, they cannot learn. If a child does not feel safe at school, they will not come to school. If we aren't proactive rather than reactive, we as a school community are causing the situations to get worse. It's been 1 month since Next Benedict died in Oklahoma. Please do not wait for a tragedy to occur here to implement real, impactful change. NHPS can be an exemplary school district for safe and welcoming schools, a model for protecting all of its students. Thank you.
We're ready for the next person, and thank you to the previous speaker for honoring the time.
Hello, my name is Taisha Baez. My daughters attend Jepson, Benjamin Jepson. I'm here because there was an incident that happened at my daughter's school. She was sexually assaulted by another student, and I have yet to receive answers from the school. Instead, I received retaliation. I went to Board of Education meeting to confirm that I was banned from the school because they banned me from the school because I kept pressing the issue of my daughter being sexually assaulted. And Board of Education meeting, they confirmed that I am banned from the school. But just this last week on March 6th, my youngest daughter, because she attended the school as well, they couldn't find her. My oldest says she was nowhere to be found. So I'm initially not able to enter the school, although the people at pickup told me I could wait inside because it was raining. They kept insisting I went to the office, but I told them no, because supposedly I'm banned from the school. And now I'm hearing that the police are looking for me, knocking on my house door, looking for me, I guess because of the incident. So I just don't approve of the way they're handling the situation. It's not fair to me, it's not fair to my kids, and I just want answers. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Something that I heard from the first speaker, that this should be a district that is proactive and not reactive. From the day Dr. Joyner became a board member, I have been pressing for policies. I've asked for the one thing that we should have is policies changing. We say that we're working on policies. I helped work on policies. We're putting them up, but they don't go up in a timely fashion, nor are they implemented. You want parents involved, but yet you ban them, and yet you have leadership that that are biased. No one is following the protocol. So we have a sexual assaulted student, and we talked about social emotional. Parents, how would your behavior be if your child come home and say, somebody bad touch? How would you react? Would you really walk into a building with a smile on your face? The policy says causing disturbance. But what is disturbance? What is disturbance? Is disturbance a parent not being upset or being upset and now she's banned? But you can't find her daughter. So she has to come inside the building. And yet now the police is looking for her because policies was followed according to your assistant superintendent. What policies and procedures was followed? No one followed policies in this district. Because if we did, we wouldn't have to talk about the social emotional well-being of our students. We wouldn't have to talk about how teachers are feeling. We wouldn't have to talk about a lot of things that you keep hearing us talk about. And how long, Dr. Joyner, you been up here? And that's how long I've been pushing for policies to change. You go up, you click a link, webpage not found. You go up, you find a policy, it says 1995. You can't have it both ways. You either want parents involved and then follow policies accordingly, because without any form of order, you have chaos. This system needs to change. It needs to be dismantled. It needs to have policies and procedures implemented. Everyone, from the teachers to the administrators, to the superintendent, to the assistant superintendent, to the parents, to the students, if you had them, a lot of our problems that we have, we wouldn't have. But you can't have it both ways. Now this parent has police looking for her. For what reason? Because someone said that policies was followed. You have a child just recently got hit in the head by teachers, but policies was followed. Come on, we got to do better.
The next three speakers, Vicky Grubar, Claire Luzin, and Peter Butler.
Hello, I'm Vicky Gruba, and I am a parent of 2 children at Worthington Hooker School, as well as a PTA board member at our school. And I am here again to talk about our lack of nurse in our Canner Street building, where I have a child. Mrs. Marie Ackerman, who is one of our beloved paraprofessionals who has provided public comment here before for this very issue, is unable to be here tonight. But I'm sharing her experience over the last week. Our admin assistant has not been in, and so she's been covering the front desk and covering the office. And she's been dealing with nonstop issues that would be normally dealt with by a nurse. Just last Friday alone, she had attended to 14 students with bumps, cuts, fevers, and nosebleeds. And on Thursday, the 7th, she had 2 students with temperatures of over 101 who had chills, who had to fall asleep in the office while she tended to other administrative duties, waiting for their parents to pick them up. This is completely unfair to those students and their parents to have no nurse to attend to these problems. That was directly provided by Mrs. Ackerman. So this is just a glimpse into the challenges that we're facing without a nurse in our school. It's not only unfair, but a risk to our children and completely inappropriate for our teachers and staff to be taken out of the classroom and their scope of practice to address the injuries and health situations that are most appropriate for a nurse. So please, again, we are asking for a nurse in our K-2 building. Thank you.
My name is Claire Rosine. I'm also a parent from Hooker. I have children in 1st, 4th, and 6th grade there. I am also here to testify about the lack of a nurse in the lower school building. As I'm sure you know, Hooker is the only school in the city that has 2 buildings that are separated by about a 10 or 15-minute walk. For several years, we have only had 1 nurse, and in the past, the nurse used to run back and forth between the buildings. But for the past several months, I've been told that the nurse at the upper school is no longer permitted to travel to the lower school where my youngest child is. So I am one of the parents that the paraprofessional called about a bumped head for my son, and he was fine. But we are really only 1 serious incident away from a very dangerous situation. We have untrained eyes looking at children who have been injured or are sick, and God forbid that there would be some urgent kind of medical emergency. There are 2 main reasons that I think we really need a nurse as soon as possible at the lower school. First of all, obviously, the health and safety of our children. Second, the quality of their education. Our teachers, paras, and administrative staff are giving hours and hours taking care of skin knees, bloody noses, fevers, coughs, and those hours should be spent educating our kids. So this situation has gone on for a long time. So I really urge you to take urgent action on this. I ask that the Board of Education and the Health Department to allocate a nurse to the Worthington Hooker Lower School as soon as possible. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's a lot different doing it in person than over Zoom. I'm Peter Butler, current parent of an 8th and 6th grader at Hooker, a current PTA officer, and a proud New Haven resident. I'm back tonight to continue to advocate for a school nurse at the Cantor Street campus of Worthington Hooker School. My daughter, who has type 1 diabetes, has benefited greatly from nursing care at the Whitney Avenue campus, and when she was at Cantor, from the nurse there. While I deeply appreciate the work of our school nurses through the years, shout out to Nurse Jan, Nurse Barbara, and Nurse Nicole, I also feel the responsibility to continue to advocate for the kindergarten through 2nd graders at the other campus who have no nursing services. While we appreciate the recent response to our letter through email and understand meetings are being held, we'd like to see concrete progress on this matter for the good of all kids at the Cantor Street campus. We'd also appreciate a more timely update than the month that it took to get a response to our advocacy email. Totally switching gears, I wanted to share how wonderful my daughter's 6th grade math teacher is at Hooker. Mrs. Courtney DeMaria is fantastic. She inspires my daughter to engage in math, which she has traditionally despised, in ways that she never has before. And while she was 2 years below grade level when she got to Mrs. DeMaria in 5th grade, she is now on grade level. I wanted to publicly appreciate Mrs. DeMaria for her compassion, her love, and her investment in my child and all of her 5th and 6th graders at Hooker in a way that truly goes above and beyond. Thank you.
Online, we have Jaylene Hadley.
Yes, hi, it's Julianne Hadley. I'm also a parent of a Worthington Hooker Elementary School children, here to join the other speakers in sharing concerns related to the nursing shortage. In a past meeting, I did share specific examples of when my kids did not have adequate access to a school nurse, when they had head injuries and other issues. Today, I'd just like to reinforce those concerns as you prepare to discuss this more formally. First and foremost, the absence of a qualified nurse jeopardizes our children's safety and welfare. Accidents and medical emergencies can occur at any moment within the school environment. And without a nurse, the response time is significantly delayed. We owe it to our students to provide immediate and competent medical attention. Furthermore, the presence of a nurse goes beyond addressing emergencies. They can identify and support health issues early on, provide essential care for chronic conditions, administer medications, and more. So without a nurse on site at the elementary school, these vital services are severely compromised, leaving many members of our younger population vulnerable and underserved. Moreover, the absence of a nurse creates an undue burden on other staff members, as others have shared. They need to be trained or equipped to handle these medical emergencies. Teachers and administrative staff should not be expected to fill the role of a medical professional, as it detracts from their primary responsibilities and places additional strain on an already demanding workload. From my conversations with the administrators in this school, I can tell that the stress levels are very high. In addition to the school nurse shortage, other teachers are not in place in some cases, and I have more to say on that in a minute. Lastly, I just want to say that I have concerns not only about the well-being of our children, but the potential for legal action should an emergency arise that someone at the school cannot handle. So in light of these concerns, I do urge the Board of Ed to prioritize the funding of a nurse for the Worthington Hooker Elementary School. And if time allows, I'd love to just say that on a separate note, my eldest was without a permanent teacher for around a month. And I barely knew that that was happening because I did not receive any communication until just before they returned from what I understand is a disciplinary leave. I would like to urge the Board of Ed and the school administration to improve the way they communicate to parents about teacher absences. It's really unsettling to learn that we don't know who's teaching our children and what the issues are related to these disciplinary actions. Thank you so much for your time and attention to these matters.
Our next speaker is Steve Stesniak.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Steve Stesniak. I'm the chair of the SPMT at Metropolitan Business Academy, and I'd like to share a letter on behalf of our SPMT with the Board of Education. To the members of the New Haven Public Schools Board of Education, on behalf of the school community at MBA, our SPMT wishes to first thank Ms. Sequela Coleman for her service to Metro. As principal at Metro, Ms. Coleman used her lifetime's worth of experiences and connections across New Haven Public Schools for the benefit of students and staff. For example, Ms. Coleman helped resurrect a beloved MBA tradition that had been wiped out by the pandemic, the senior Camp Cedar Crest trip with Project Pride. For the last 2 Septembers, Metro seniors have started their school year supporting one another in challenges like the Big Swing and the Pamper Pole, proving to themselves that with the help and support of their classmates, they can achieve anything. This winter, Ms. Coleman helped facilitate the opening of our school-based health clinic in partnership with the Fairhaven Community Health Center. The clinic and staff are already having a measurable impact on student wellness and school culture at Metro. For your acts of service to the MBA community, both big and small, we thank you, Ms. Coleman, and we wish you all the best as you begin the next phase of your NHPS career. Second, the MBA community is thrilled to welcome Ms. Ann Brilliante as our new principal. In addition to all that was said about Ms. Brilliante at the previous board meeting when her appointment was approved, our SPMT is excited for the ways her expertise in areas like course development, master scheduling, and trauma-informed pedagogy will support and improve our school program. Today was Ms. Brilliante's first official day at Metro, and even before first period began, her interactions with staff and students showed she has already hit the ground running. Ms. Brilliante, we support you and we're eager to work alongside you. Finally, our SPMT would like to say thank you to Dr. Negron and her team that made this transition at MBA happen, including Dr. White, Ms. Lisa Flegler, and Ms. Sarah Diggs. When Dr. Negron visited MBA on January 2nd to announce that we would be having a change in leadership, she acknowledged that the disruption that this may cause. But she assured us that the transition would be process-oriented and the voice of our SPMT would be carefully considered. While getting from Dr. Negron's visit in January to Ms. Brillante's first day as principal today was not always easy, relying on our shared Comer values of collaboration, consensus, and no-fault problem solving allowed our SPMT and district administration to make what we feel was truly the right decision for the future of our school. Thank you, Dr. Negron. Our SPMT looks forward to sharing future updates on the great things happening at Metro and working with district and Board of Ed leadership to support our young people. Thank you.
Our next speaker is David Tate.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Tate. I am a parent at Worthington Hooker, and I just wanted to join the other parents who spoke earlier in advocating for a nurse for the Canner Street campus. My son has type 1 diabetes, which he's had since he was 13 months old. We would not be able to go to school if we did not have a nurse in the building. My son is probably one of the reasons why the nurse cannot leave the upper school premises, because he's seeing her throughout the day. And it's a risk, as the other parents have noted, it's a risk, and it's putting an undue burden on other teachers on the Canner Street campus. So I just wanted to join with the other voices in urging you all to please support another nurse for the Canner Street campus. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Madam President, that concludes all hands raised and names on the list.
Thank you, Dr. White and Dr. Joyner. Dr. White, sound issues? Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the approval of the board meeting minutes for our February 26th meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, I move we approve the February 26 minutes.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox and Dr. Joyner. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will vote to approve the board meeting minutes of February 26th, of which I will abstain because I was not at that meeting. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez is not on. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz Bustamante?
Abstain.
Mr. Musser? Mr. Musser? We have to have it in. Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I will abstain, and so that motion passes. Mr. Musser, are you able to? You seem to be muted. Oh, he can't, no. Okay, thank you, Mr. Musser. Personnel report, Dr. Negron? No. Sorry.
I'm hereby asking for approval of the personnel report in your packet.
Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Wilcox?
I move we approve the action items of the superintendent's personnel report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Mr. Wilcox? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve on the personnel report. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner? Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Ms. Downer? Yeah. Ms. Cruz Bustamante?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Thank you. And I am a yes as well, and so that motion carries. Dr. Negron, did you want to speak about the non-action items of the personnel report? Anything you wanted to discuss?
No, not today.
Thank you. And the next item is the approval of the 2024-25 and 25-26 10-month calendar. Who's gonna discuss that?
If I may, I just want to acknowledge the great collaboration that our team was able to have with the New Haven Federation of Teachers, which allowed for the development of the calendars.
Is there a motion to approve the calendars? Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, I move we approve the 2024-25 and the 25-26 calendars.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Yarborough, any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote on the approval of the 24-25 and 25-26 10-month calendars. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz Bustamante?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, and so that motion carries. Finance and operations, Mr. Wilcox?
All right, thank you very much. As is typical, I'll be asking if anybody wants anything moved separately. I will be moving the transportation contract separately because I imagine there might be questions about that. But if there's anything else, please let me know. Yes.
I would like to have the change orders moved separately.
All right,
And
so the
also
one,
line 10. Sorry,
all right, so that was agreement 10
agreement 10 in the change orders.
and the one change order. All right, I'll move those separately. We'll go ahead and we'll start with the transportation contract. I move that we approve the award of the multi-year contract to First Student to be our commercial provider of student transportation services.
Second.
Been moving properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. We'll move to approve, what were the items again? All of the F and O items. with the
No, it's
exception of
just the
change order?
transportation, just the transportation
Just the
contract at this time.
transportation? The transportation contract. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
No, now you can't hear us at all,
Oh,
right?
I'm sorry, there's a question.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm not, I guess, I was reading the memorandum and I guess I had a question about just some language that the service will never be perfect. Is that something that we would like to revise or look at?
In the,
So page 9, it says the service will never be perfect, but we'll always be striving for improvement.
okay, so what, if I may, you're referring to the memo which our chief operating officer provided about this. So I don't think that statement in the memo would become part of the actual contract
Okay.
language that he was just explaining in the memo that things will not always be perfect, but there's processes in place where they're going to collaboratively work to improve the services when issues do arise.
Right, I was asking to basically find a way to remove those 5 words, because that sets the tone on how the service will be delivered to us. That it would never be perfect. So whenever situations arise, that can come back up. That, you know, you understood that the service will never be perfect. So it's how the language is written, and that's my only question.
Okay, so if I may respectfully, we're not approving the memo. We would be approving the award of the contract. And from that, the contract is then done with legal counsel and with First Student. And so the language in the memo is not in that. So I think it's perfectly fine to recommend that moving forward that, you know, we don't use language like that, but the memo isn't on the table at this time.
But the memo will be given to First Student. Will they see this memo?
It's a public document. It's posted on the website. I suppose if First Student wanted to, they would be able to review it. But to my knowledge, they are not going to be receiving this memo. This memo is for the board and then also the public to talk through some of the points of the transportation contract.
Right, and this also sets the position of who's writing this memo, that it's okay for the service to never be perfect. So maybe that type of language should not be in a document that someone can see. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, Ms. Downer. Mr. Wilcox, any further discussion?
I actually have, like to make a point on that as well.
Jordan?
I think that, that it's a good thing to ask whomever's writing memos about like that, to not use that kind of language. I mean, imagine if you were having some work done on your house and the first thing you saw was this job may not be perfect. I mean, I think reasonable people can understand sometimes there are constraints because perfection doesn't exist, period, unless you define it such that it does. So I think it's a good point, and I think that we should stick to the details of the contract, even in memos, because it does. You know, you're on the operating table, and your doctor says, "I don't know if this is going to be perfect." Or you go to a restaurant and somebody serves you something. They say, "Well, this might not be perfect." So it's really not necessary. So it probably should be a warning to anybody that's writing memos like that to just stick to the facts and not make comments like that, which appears to be a preemptive move that says if something does go wrong, well, we said it wasn't going to be perfect. So I just don't think it's a good. It's not professional. It's not business-like to include something like that in text that goes before the public.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll move to approve the transportation contract. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez, Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz Bustamante?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, and so that motion passes. Mr. Wilcox?
All right, for the second motion, I'll be moving, I move that we approve agreement number 10, which is an agreement with BRD Builders LLC to provide estimating services.
Second.
Any discussion? Yeah, we have discussion on everything. Oh. Did you want to say something? Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, I actually got the chance to review this agreement, which is actually attached to another agreement here. Let me just state it correctly. So I got the chance to review the agreement for the BRD Builders, which was at 36.7K. That's about $175 an hour. to estimate the Floyd, Little, bleachers? Is this just the bleachers at Floyd Little or Hill House too?
If you would like, I could answer the.
So you don't have to
okay.
answer. I find it very, very, I just don't understand the fact that we have to pay somebody to estimate something when we have knowledge of what is going into these schools, what is going as far as bleachers for Floyd Little Center. It's not that we're doing a whole, I would say, I know there's a track area there. I've been in the Floyd Little Center. So I'm pretty sure there's a cradle to grave at this point where we have to replace the bleachers. I couldn't understand why someone could not look at an original contract to see what the Irwin Seating Company is gonna be paid $1.3 million for. And I can't understand why a company, and I've never seen this before, why a company would need to be paid 1.3 million and wouldn't come and even see or scope of the job. So I was just a little concerned that we are paying people to do something that's already built into a contract for 1.3 million. So if I'm reading it correctly, it looks like we have someone estimating for Irwin, which I'm pretty sure Irwin will come back to see if they have the proposal to make sure they have what they need to provide us. So someone needs to explain to me why we're paying for estimation on a third party.
Thank you. I'd be happy to do that. As I mentioned in my email to you yesterday afternoon, which you might not have had a chance to read because we're all extremely busy people. But this agreement for estimation services is not related at all to the bleacher contract that's on here. The district is intending to pursue school construction funds for renovation work at the Floyd Little Athletic Center and at Hill House School to address a lot of the infrastructure needs. They'll be applying for, I think it was testified in our F&O meeting, around $14 million worth of funding. And as a requirement, the Office of School Construction for the state requires professional estimation services when something is submitted to them. And so that testimony is part of the meeting reporting, and there's also some information on the state Office of School Construction website where they do have a policy discussing their estimation service requirements. So it's not in any way connected to the bleacher contract. The bleacher contract will be happening hopefully now if the board approves it. And the estimation services will be, well, it's also for Hill House and Floyd Little Athletic Center. It's not going to be for these bleachers. It's going to be for many other projects. I believe it was mentioned more roof projects similar to the auditorium roof, which was replaced this last summer. So.
Thank you, Ms. Downer. Mr. Wilcox?
1 minute.
Go ahead.
I don't have a signal, but I thought I saw bleacher in their proposal. Okay.
Madam Chair?
That's all I have.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes, just to make this perfectly clear to the public. It looks like in order for us to go after the $14 million, that there's a procedural requirement to have an estimation service to go through everything that we propose in the proposal. It looks like it's a third party group that is not tied to either the state or Hill House. Is that correct, Mr. Wilcox?
Mr. Wilcox?
That is a part of the procedure to have a third party estimator.
Yes,
And
the Connecticut Office of School Construction requires professional estimation services to move forward with applications for their funding. And I did go and verify on their website that they do have a policy talking about estimator services.
Okay, so there's no, that is a requirement for the actual grant submission process. At least that's how I read it, that you couldn't go forward with a grant submission unless you had a third party to do the estimation in order to fulfill the requirements of the proposal.
That is correct.
Okay. That's important. That's important to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any further discussion, Mayor Elicker?
So I'm a little familiar with this item. I just want to clarify. So school construction is one potential avenue for the work that we're doing to try to secure this funding. And so I hear, you know, and I see something like an estimate, and I say, why can't we just do this in-house? But it's actually much more complicated than anyone that is not in this area would imagine, to estimate how much roof repairs and the bathroom repairs and other additional repairs beyond the bleachers would cost in the field house. And therefore, in addition to it being very helpful to us being able to present a full application, likely to the state, for this funding, it is also potentially a requirement if we went for school construction grants, but we're looking at multiple different options. And we're trying to do this in honor of the 165th anniversary of Hill House. And so that's why this is on the agenda today.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Ms. Downer?
So I'm actually reading exactly from the proposed. It says, "Dear Frank, as per our meeting on Wednesday, BRB Builders would like to offer services to help properly budget the James Hill House High School and attach FLAC." Now, the attached FLAC is not attached to this, of course, but we were proposed the following amounts of estimating for both the FLAC, which is including, I guess the only contract up here for the FLAC is the 1.38 million, okay? So maybe he's not talking about the LAC contract that's attached to this. So that's what I'm talking about in the Hill House. So that means that I stand on what I said. We're paying $36,750 for the FLAC attached to this BRB Builder LLC contract for $175. I rest.
Thank you, Ms. Downer. Mr. Wilcox?
And again, the estimation services aren't going to be for the bleachers, because the bleachers will hopefully be done by then, but has also been testified in previous meetings. Floyd Little Athletic Center also needs a roof. It also needs new flooring surface, new track surface, and a variety of other high-cost items. I assume it could use paint and maybe some other improvements for lighting. So one thing that it fortunately will not need is new bleachers, because the bleachers will be installed. I think that this is also a good thing that the bleachers will be installed, because we spend money to an outside contractor to move those bleachers every time they need to be opened and closed. And the new system, which is not what we're talking about now, but is also one of the other action items, the new system is going to be much easier and will not require outside work. So, so I can see why there's confusion, because it is a project. The bleachers are going into the Floyd Little Athletic Center, and the Floyd Little Athletic Center is part of the estimation services, but those estimation services are going to be for other parts of the center that need fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Seeing no further discussion, we'll go.
Actually, I have my hand up.
Dr. Joyner?
Right. I don't like making the same mistake twice. I think I understand what Mr. Wilcox has said. This is a bit of an outlier, because it does look like we're paying for estimating services. It would be helpful in the future if we were either able to put this in, maybe even in our policy, that there will be grant applications that require an outside estimator, so that board members will know that this is a condition of applying for the grant rather than frivolous spending. And I'm just wondering if our finance people could, even if there were a glossary or something in our documents that says that, you know, estimating services third-party estimating services will sometimes be required based on the type of grant that we're submitting and to whom we're submitting it. And that way we can probably, create more trust in the group and have this explained in advance of the meeting. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Yeah, I think it makes sense. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll vote to approve agreement number 10. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Cruz Bustamante,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. And so that motion passes. Mr. Wilcox?
So I'd like to go ahead and make the motion. I move that we approve change order 1 to contract 21,852 for on-call drywall painting and services.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Yarborough, Mr. Wilcox?
As a point of information on this item, as you will note, this is a large change order of around 40%, which is not typical. Typical change orders, I believe the city and also on the school side try to keep it below 20%. After the board acts on this, this will have to go before a change order committee that city has, where they will also examine this. I received word that Mr. Lamb will be presenting it there. He will have to write a memo to justify it and the reasons for it. And so if there is a problem based on the city side, then it'll be denied there, and then they'll have to go back to probably put this back out to bid again. The interest in having this move forward in an expedited manner without going through that bid process is this is originally done because of having to cut ties with another vendor that was doing these services. We had 2 contracts for this, so this is moving the work over to one of the other ones that had the contract for these services. And it'll also allow doing some work that's needed to be done in tight windows where the work can be done. I believe it was specifically mentioned a lot of painting work at Fairhaven School.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any further discussion?
I do.
Ms. Downer?
I for one, am still wondering how we're voting on change orders when there's no policy. There's nothing in our policy that says how we vote on change orders. I was the one that flagged the 40%. This would have actually came here. And to me, no procurement policy has a 40% on a purchase order that was already approved. To me, this sends a lot of red flags that this person probably shouldn't have been approved in the first place. Normal change orders are between 10 to 15%. Normal. This is public funds. We have to be really careful how we're spending this money. What are we really doing here? So when I see a change order with 40%, that sends a big red flag to me. It is disgusting. And when I see that even coming across any purchase order or amendment, it sends a big red flag here. I, for one, have been looking for the procurement policy that should have came to the governance board since February 5th. It has not come. And I don't know where it's at and when it's coming. Because these type of things need to be addressed. We need to get the resources that we need to our students. There's no way we can do it with this being a cash cow. There's no way. And I'm saying this because it's me that's saying it. I'm not speaking for the board. I know for sure when you're dealing with public funds, You have to have those thresholds there. And that's pretty much what I'm saying. I mean, I do know that you do have to look at the original contract and the value of the contract. It seems like we're paying astronomical for things. There's no price methodology when I see these type of prices. And it bothers me. It bothers me. It bothers me. When I see 40%, it's not right. That's all I gotta say. I also say that if we say we're gonna do something, we ought to do it. The policy was supposed to come. The policy is missing inside that policy, the procurement policy is missing how we relate to supplementals or change documents. We're voting when there's no policy in place. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Ms. Downer, Mr. Wilcox, and then Dr. Yarborough, you had your hand up, but you're no longer wanting to speak?
I'll decide by then. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Mr. Wilcox?
I first want to apologize for giving some indication that the Finance and Operations Committee was going to have the purchasing policy rework done and completed and sent to the Governance Committee in February. We've been working on it. It's on the agendas. It's going to be on the agenda for our next meeting. I will certainly take the recommendation to include language for handling change orders and thresholds for change orders. Our policy is silent, although the city policies are not, which we also abide by. And as I mentioned, the city will be looking at this and making sure that it passes muster as far as that goes. But that'll certainly be a case, and the Finance and Operations Committee, when it's complete, will send it to governance. And I would hope that that happens sooner than later, but it might not. I can't go back in time. And so I apologize if I gave some indication that it was done and not being worked on to incorporate these changes. I'll also point out that when we discussed this in the Finance and Operations Committee, it was Dr. Yarborough, as I recall, that did flag it as a 40% increase. And then we had a conversation for that. And it was also in my questions to flag it, because that's what we do in Finance and Operations, is look at percentage increases of these. And we ask the questions and get the information when they are out of the norm. And so, and again, our Finance and Operations Committee, we post all the information the Friday before the meeting. Happy to have any questions from members of the board or from the public. And we will work to get the answers to it. Might not be answers to the satisfaction, but at least there'll be answers and we can move from there. So I will be supporting this tonight itself when we vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner?
I'd like to make a comment on process and then a comment on this particular contract. One, we should be very careful. We shouldn't assume good intentions, because we're all volunteers and we're working very hard to try to make things work out for the community. We should also appreciate when people flag things that and that we can discuss them publicly. And we should avoid using what Hayakawa would call snarl words that incite a particular type of reaction that may not be good. But the bottom line is that the contract itself, I mean, imagine that we set up a budget and we had a budgeted amount for this particular project. And given the tight budget constraints that we have, all of a sudden we find out that this particular contract is going to cost us an additional, what was it, $300,000? No, it's $120,000. So something like this should have a clear explanation. And imagine if this were your home and you were having some repairs done on the home and you had a vendor that said it was going to cost, say, $800. And then all of a sudden, when it was time to actually do the work, the person increased the amount by 40%. So this is a serious issue. And if I heard everybody right, we started out with one vendor. Is that correct? And then we switched to another one? Is that?
Is that a question for me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would, to whomever can answer it, you know.
As I mentioned previously, we started out with 2 vendors for these services. We parted company with 1 vendor. So the district was budgeting to expend funds in this amount. They just were planning to spend it over 2 companies because I think it shows wise planning, because if you have an issue with one of them, or if you have work that needs to happen concurrently, you have multiple companies with which to send it. And we have other examples of these types of contracts where we have 2 vendors that we work with. Typically the first, the cheapest and the next cheapest vendor, because it goes through the bid process. So there was 2. This isn't a case, I don't think we ought to be maligning the company. This is not a case of them coming back. And if I may, if this is not a case of them coming back and say, oh, now we want a bunch more money. This is a case of the district saying, while we now have 1 vendor where we used to have 2, we still need to do the work. And so this is why this change order is before us. Thank you.
Okay, so I wasn't maligning the vendors. The point I'm trying to make is that if we have a fixed amount to do a particular job, and if the services don't change, then whomever gives us a bid gives us a good faith bid that says, I'm willing to do this for this, even if there's multiple companies. So was the total budgeted amount for the job $300,000 in the beginning for that particular job?
If that's a question for me, I would have to go back and double check. My understanding is, my recollection is we had 2 vendors. They both had the same amount, if not to exceed funds. So this is not the case of a job going over. This is a case of we were planning to expend this level of funds over 2 vendors. And now the suggestion before us is to use 1 vendor. And as a reminder, the backstop check on this is the city's change order committee, which will be reviewing this. And that includes, my understanding is, purchasing folks and corp counsel folks that look at this based on city policy and practice.
Okay, I'm just, one more question, because I'm a little confused. We had a fixed amount for 2 contractors. Was that fixed amount $300,000 or was it $420,000? $421.41. Which of the figures was the fixed amount?
As I said, I'd have to go back and double check. My understanding, it probably was, since this one company had 300,000, it was 2 vendors for 300,000 each, total of 600,000. But I would have to go back and look at the paperwork to double check that. The point being is that there was some funds going to one company and another. And now the suggestion is it goes to one company.
Madam Chair, in the public interest, I think I would suggest we table this and come back with specific information so that, and I understand the check and balances process with the city. And I'm just wondering, should it go there and then we find out, or should we table it and get the figures, the exact figures that were initially budgeted, and a better explanation of how it goes from how it increases by $120,000, because I'm not really understanding it. And I don't know if everybody else on the board does as well. And I'm just wondering if it would make sense for us to table this until we can get more specific information that will have a timeline of, one, the exact amount of money that was budgeted for the project, and then a timeline that shows us where we had a problem and how we got to the point where we're now asking for $120,000 in addition to for the total amount of 420. Because I think that will create a level of trust that is necessary to vote on this.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Dr. Negron, is there anyone here that can speak to
I have a question.
this contract? Hold 1 second.
My mic is not working. Our chief of operations right now is in the city. So he's not available to provide specifics. So no, I cannot
I think she,
provide those pieces.
Good evening. I'm Christine Bourne, the Business Director of General Funds. The concern here, I think, is that there is no more money being added. They're combining the two so that one vendor is getting the amount that the two would have gotten. And that if we don't pass this to move forward to the next committee, we're not going to have time to get the work done. That has to be done before year end. So it is a little bit of a time-sensitive issue.
thank you. Okay, thank you. Hold on, Ms. Downer and then Dr. Joyner.
So what I've been noticing is that there's a lot of time sensitive things that go on and it's such a rush to get something done here. The other thing I've noticed is that this whole line is missing 6 words, which there is a potential that this contract can grow even if they have both of them. I noticed that it doesn't say in an amount not to exceed. So that's an open window right there. I'm not sure, but it's not presented to the board tonight that that is the case. And the other thing is, the loss of vendors. I noticed that there are things that happen with the loss of vendor. Maybe their contract ends and maybe perhaps they have not fulfilled their contract. I know there's things in our policy that says that we have to have some sort of legal ramification to go after folks that we've already given them thousands of dollars to do things and things are not done. So I don't hear any mention of any of that. This is public funds. I don't know if, like Dr. Joyner stated, will we do this to our home? Or will we advocate, get lawyers and everything else? No. We're doing this for the children. Are we really doing it for the children? So I'm just really, I hear time and it's sensitive and I'm going to vote on something that's 40% more because of time. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, Ms. Downer, Dr. Yarborough, and then Mr. Wilcox. Oh, Dr. Yarborough, you took your hand down again?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, I am one who brought up this topic when the F&O committee met last Tuesday, I believe. And my understanding of this, so independent of whether or not it's time sensitive, my understanding is that we already approved for these resources to be spent on this work. We are not expending more resources. We are combining the resources into one contract. So I support this work being done. I do not feel rushed. I do not feel pressured. I think I understand what is presented in front of us and how we walk through the discussion during the F&O meeting. I don't see this as anyone in the district or even ourselves being negligent or not being responsible with the funds. So just sharing, my position that I did ask questions about this. I did get my questions clarified, and given the fact that we're not spending more money to this extent, allows me to support this. That's all, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, I'd like to move to amend my motion. That is, I amend my motion by adding in the language for a total of amount not to exceed $420,001.41.
Second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to amend the original motion to approve, change order number 1. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
No.
Ms. Cruz Bustamante. Oh, I'm sorry, they had to leave. Mr. Musser,
Abstain.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so that motion passes. And so we move on to the original motion of the change order. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Wilcox? This is to
Yes.
approve the change order. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Downer? Change order 1. Yes.
No.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so that motion also passes. Mr. Wilcox?
And now I'll make the large motion, and that is I move that we approve the 1 abstract, the remaining 10 agreements, the 1 contract, and the 2 purchase orders as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Yarborough, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the remaining F and O items. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. That item passes. And we will move on to the students report.
Harmony requested that I read something in his name as he couldn't stay long enough for the students report to be read. What do the children see in us? Good evening, colleagues, teachers, students, and members of the public. First order of business, the tentative date for the March citywide Students' Council meeting is this Friday at 10 a.m. at Hill House High School. My term ends in approximately 4 months. Since I have started, I've been blessed with being surrounded by countless people in New Haven Public Schools who have dedicated immense time, labor, and resources to making a better district. I'd like to thank John Carlos, Ela Sundstrom, Lila Thylan, Leslie Blateau, and many more. I want to start with gratitude because these folks, alongside hundreds of other students, organizers, and revolutionaries, are my anchor. They're reminders of hope, peace, and justice for me and us all, especially in the dark times, and unfortunately, we are in very dark times. On February 7th, 2024, Next Benedict was jumped by 3 students in their high school bathroom. The next day, Next Benedict died. It's been a month and no one has uttered their name. There are no easy answers. There are no easy answers for why Next, a bright, fiery, adventurous person, a young person, a child who was not protected. We must not be confronted with our silence. We must be confronted with our silence, sorry. Why did this bright soul, have to die? When faced with tragedies like this, we tend to focus on the negative and on the individual, absent, loss, blame. It's easier to focus on the 3 students who were so moved by hate that they jumped their fellow peers instead of the fact that the state played a direct role in murdering and suffering. The state, the U.S. government, Oklahoma, the municipality, and even the very school district enabled his death. These institutions and agents of the state were not helpless. They're all implicit and deputized by the wealth and violent authority vested in the U.S. empire. In their veins, we have a duty to break this dreadful fact. In the 1980 essay, Notes on the History of Bondage, James Baldwin wrote, "The children are always ours, every single one of them, all over the globe. And I'm beginning to suspect that whoever is incapable of recognizing this may be incapable of morality. Or I'm saying, in other words, that we, the elders, are the only models children have. We have to see in the children is what they have to see in us, or more accurately, perhaps, what they see in us. In the last several months, I've been asking what do the children see in us? What do the children of the world see in us? What do the children of Gaza see in our faces when we're not on the news? When they see the state of Connecticut and U.S. investing in violence rather than the peace building in scholasticide, rather than the building schools and prisons, rather than the neighborhoods? Do they see bravery, denunciation, and repulsion from its people? Or do they see cowardice, silence, and complicity? I fear that all of us are knee-deep in the waters of the latter. Everyone likes to think that they're the good guys in the history books, that if they went back in time to when atrocities engulfed the world in its flames, they would do the right thing. They would be honest, loud, and righteous. Now is that time. I want to put on the record my position and the position of many New Haven public school students. We support and demand a ceasefire. A ceasefire is the bare minimum justice looks like in the end to the occupation, and that we struggle with getting through a statement of support for a ceasefire. It seems like that's a common theme, struggling for the bare minimum. I and many like me support a ceasefire because the children of Gaza and the children of the world are my kin. All the suffering in the world is interconnected and has a source, but so is hope. So is a steadfast sense of resistance and joy. So the hymns of the doves, interconnected, fierce, unified. What we say to our children, the children of New Haven, and to the world, I say this, that our honor and cherish next Benedict's life, that we take up steps to protect queer and vulnerable students, for there are thousands like them, thousands of them right here at our home too. I say that we root ourselves on the side of a ceasefire, the silence of warplanes, an end to the bombing of Gaza's schools, universities, students, and scholars. I say that we not root ourselves in building a world of full. I say that we root ourselves in building a world of full bellies, chatty classrooms, spectrums of expression and joy, and beautiful neighborhoods. These are the lofty visions. What do you want to tell the children of the future when they ask you about the dark time? Will you tell them the story of resistance and disruption for life, or will you recount the time you were silent and fearful? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Musser. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the teaching and learning report. Dr. Joyner?
Yes, I'd like to call your attention to the science of interest handout that I put in the board packet. Matt and I met with Dave and John Carlos, and I forgot the other young lady's name, and we talked about trying to create a curriculum that would be motivating for many of our students. And we had discussions about how important interest was in doing all this. So I put that in your handout so you can read the most recent research on interest as a means of motivating students. And of course, independent reading and books of choice is tailor-made for that. And we should be thinking about doing this system-wide, having students doing projects that they have a great interest in. John Carlos just read a very compelling letter that Harmony wrote. And of course, there's some legal issues around that. And there's a great contrast between Nebraska and Connecticut in terms of how they treat children who are LGBTQS, I believe is an additional term. And I think we ought to decide as a system the balance between content and skills in our curriculum. In many ways, content is giving a child a fish, but skills would be giving a child a way to catch fish. And my concern when I visit schools is that there are very few people that are teaching kids how to write effectively. And it's actually in our policy. And we certainly do need to upgrade our policies. So with that in mind, I decided that I'm going to look not only at CABE, but Shipman and Goodman. Natalia gave me password to get into their policy. The good thing about looking at Shipman and Goodman is that you're covered legally, because having spent most of the day looking at their policies, they have the legal citation. And whether it's federal, state, they have that there, so we don't have to worry about that. So the other issue is that we need to have the relevant staff assigned to the relevant policy area to work with us. And we kind of need it yesterday. So if it's a 600 series, then my point of contact would be the person in charge of curriculum instruction and assessment. If it's in business, it would be the relevant person in business, and so on and so forth. And I believe that systemic planning starts in the classroom. It really is from the classroom up. So having visited Troop and Hill Central this week, and having looked at what was going on in the classroom, it simply is really important for us to think about the classroom when we think about planning. Think about the kids in the classroom with the teacher first, in terms of the resources they have, and then do some reverse engineering to figure out what should happen at the very top of the system. Oftentimes systems spend a lot of time planning at the top, and the plans they make at the top don't get to the classroom. I don't think that's going to happen in our case because of the talents and gifts of our superintendent as well as her team. But if one thing can come out of this particular report, Dr. Negron, if you can assign specific people to work with me on drafting, revising, and amending all the policies in the 600 series and adding additional ones as necessary. And if we can do that for the other policy areas. Another thing that we need to get clear on is literacy, a definition for literacy. Too often the average layman thinks that literacy has to do with reading. And I look at reading as a skill. And I look at reading as, in the early years, you teach a child how to learn to read. And as they encounter different subjects, now you teach them to read to learn. And so it's so important that we help people understand that every course in the curriculum is important. And that goes back to interest. Because whereas you may not be able to get a whole lot of activity out of a kid in a English class, if that child has an interest in music, then you can use that as a means to teach that child how to write more effectively in all of his or her class using that interest. So we need to look at literacy as being general literacy and content-specific literacy. Every content area has a vocabulary of its own. If we're talking genetics, I'm sure there's a person on this board can tell you that vocabulary, there's a general part of it, but there are specific terms and concepts that are unique to that field. And we ought to be doing word study across the system so that our children can grow in their understanding of words and concepts, which will allow them to grow in their ability to comprehend. And then the last thing that we really have to do as a district is that we have to embed critical thinking, inductive and deductive reasoning in all of our course content. Because if you look at what's going on in the country, if you didn't know any better, you think that Americans don't know how to think critically. They don't know how to make rational decisions. Because across the board, we're not making them as a culture. So what I'm proposing going forward is, one, assigning a relevant expert to the experts to the particular committee in question. Two, understand that there are some core learning skills and word study is important in every content area. And we have to evaluate what we do on the basis of the quality of the products that students that students create. So if we value writing, then we ought to be able to walk into school right now and find out how many writing assignments have given in various content areas. And you can't get better at something like that without doing it repeatedly. And we ought to have a word study proposal where kids are doing this beyond the school day and beyond the school year. If you think about people who have brought themselves up from poverty, they had a profound respect for language, and you didn't have to assign them anything because they assigned themselves. And so I think we're in a position to have a robust curriculum, but it starts with policy that is able to manifest itself in the classroom. And it also starts with helping these kids understand that even if you're good in school, if your character has issues, then that's a problem. So this whole notion of what Dr. Coleman preaches, of cognitive development as well as moral development. And that's how we end up with a high-performing school system. So those are some things that I'd like to see us work on over the next few months. And I have a lot of confidence we can do it, but we have to embrace no-fault problem solving. We have to be very careful about the words we use when we interact with each other. And we should try to, as the board, reach consensus on what we want to do rather than voting. Because we don't want to create winners and losers. We want to create everybody wins. And I just can't say it enough. I've lived long enough to know that our choice of words, there are a lot of things that we do that you can see it in the presidential debates that really disrupt what we're trying to achieve as a district. And that means that all of us have to look within ourselves after each board member at each board meeting to try to determine, did we bring our best selves to the meeting? And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Questions or comments for Dr. Joyner? Okay. Facilities Naming Committee, Dr. Joyner?
I'm waiting on the SPMTs from the schools. That's, if we get that, then we're good.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Negron?
Dr. Joyner, you probably have not seen it, but we were able to communicate with the SPMTs. We did collect feedback. We did send that your way. You probably haven't had a chance to see it. I believe it was late last week.
Okay, well, I'm a busy man, but I'll take full responsibility for not having seen it.
But it's in your inbox.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Dr. Negron, any questions or comments for Dr. Joyner? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Negron?
Thank you. Before I begin with the two reports that we want to bring forth tonight, just want to take a moment to acknowledge one of the things that we are celebrating in March. We celebrate many things in the month of March. And in Connecticut, one of those is Board of Education Member Month. I'm not sure if you were aware, but I wanted to call it to your attention. So it gives me great pleasure to take a few minutes of today's agenda to publicly acknowledge our Board of Education members. And on behalf of the entire school system, I want to thank you for your commitment and dedication as public servants to the children of the New Haven Public Schools. In addition to the jobs you hold as individuals, you come together to volunteer your time unselfishly to govern this amazing school district. Despite the challenges of our time, you do so because you deeply care for the future of our students and the future of our community. So thank you for your willingness to continue to do so, and accept my small token, which is the little certificate that I included in your packets today. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Negron.
Next, I want to take an opportunity to invite my team in the curriculum and instruction and assessments. we have been working very diligently, in my opinion, as it relates to not only literacy, but also numeracy. And today we want to take an opportunity to give you an update as to where we are. At the beginning of the year, we gave you some data respective to how our students were performing. And today I want to take an opportunity to share with you where we're at related to, as it relates to our mid-year assessments. And for that, I do want to invite our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Keisha Red-Hannans, and also our amazing duo, or supervisors in literacy. That is Supervisor Tusignan, who supervises literacy at the elementary level, and Dr. Jen, that's how we refer to her, who supervises literacy at the secondary level. And we're also going to be joined by our amazing direct supervisor of math, which is Ms. Joyner. So we're going to do this as one report, as opposed to doing one literacy report and one math report, because we are doing this work together as one unit.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to come before the board today and the community. We want to provide you with, as Dr. Negron said, our mid-year data report. And as you think about where we are at this current state in the year, I'm always reflective and looking back to where we've come from. And as you know, as we shared with you in October and September, literacy and math, we implemented a new core reading program in grades K through 5. In math, last year, we implemented K-5 math program, and this year, 6-8 math program as well. We've also implemented structures in our high schools that involves our department leads in ELA meeting with the secondary ELA supervisor. And we've also implemented academic team walkthroughs through every school during the first marking period. And we're continuing them now as we are in marking period 3. So just wanted to give you some framing backdrop of some of the work that we've been doing. As we go through this report, pay attention, please, to the scores in the fall versus the scores in the winter. And the team will highlight them for you, but as they walk you through our update, just pay particular attention to where we were in the fall and where we are now. And with that, I'll turn it over to Supervisor Tusignan.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. So nice to be here again with all of you. We're going to advance a slide, please. All right. Before you, you have the literacy assessment suite. So there's a column for the assessment, and then you'll see which grade levels each assessment is given in, and then the frequency of each assessment. You can go to the next slide. A few helpful terms and key language that we think will be useful throughout this presentation, terms that you may not know. DIBELS is Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills, and it is our universal screener for grades K through 3. We give 2 subtests. There are multiple subtests. We happen to give 2 of them. We give the phoneme segmentation, PSF, in grades K and 1, and we give the oral reading fluency, ORF, in grades 1 through 3. The phoneme segmentation is one in which we're asking students to tell us the phonemes. The phonemes are the smallest sounds of a word. So if I say mop, the student would be expected to give us the sounds They never have an actual word in front of them for that particular assessment. The oral reading fluency, during that assessment, they're given a passage, and the students are expected to read as much of that passage as they can within 1 minute's time, and then they get a fluency rate. And the fluency rate is calculated by the words correct per minute. Next, we have our HMH growth measure. This HMH stands for Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. It's the company that created the growth measure assessment, and it is also the parent company of InterReading and Arriba La Lectura, which are our core programs for grades 3 through 5. The growth measure is given to all students in grades 3 through 10 this year. It's given 3 times a year, but you will see in our data that there are other grade levels that do give the growth measure. We require it in grades 3 through 10, but you'll see that some 11th and 12th graders were administered the assessment, and some K through 2nd graders have also been administered the assessment. It is given in both English and Spanish where appropriate. All right, so in grades K and 1, the phoneme segmentation fluency, PSF, this is our data from the fall. It's in blue, winter is in red. So you can see that we have had an increase for both our kindergartners and our first graders in that data for both the PSF, both times, both grade levels, okay? For oral reading fluency in grades 1, 2, and 3, this again is where they're getting a fluency rate based on words correct per minute. In grade 1, we saw an increase. In grade 2, we saw an increase. In grade 3, on this particular assessment, we did see a decrease. Now, on the oral reading fluency, it's important to mention that the benchmark changes with each administration. So in the fall, the benchmark is different than it is in the winter and in the spring. So that benchmark keeps going up as the students move through the year. You will see later that this particular data point for grade 3 happens to have taken a little dip, but the comprehension data and the language data for grade 3 actually did increase. So this is a moment in time. This is one piece of data. That's why we use more than one piece of data when we're looking at kids. We have some celebrations with our HMH growth measure for our students in grades 3 through 8. There was an 8 percentage point increase of students performing at or above level from fall to winter assessment. Okay, so when we gave the assessment fall to winter, we saw an 8 percentage point increase for those students that were at or above grade level. Even more exciting than that, 35% of our students in grades 3 through 8 grew at least 1 grade level in half a year. So when we have students that are reading below grade level, in order to close the gap, we need them to make more than 1 year's growth in a year. So ideally, we would want them to make a year's worth of growth in a half year so that we're closing that gap. If those 35 students make another year's growth in the second half of the year, that will be 2 years of growth in 1 year, and that will certainly shrink that gap. Now, remember, this is an HMH assessment created by the company that also is directly correlated with InterReading and Arriba La Lectura for grades 3 through 5. So they're assessing the skills that we are teaching. That's important, I think. It's important information for you. Here, you'll see this illustrates the 8 percentage points that I spoke about. If you look all the way to the right, under the green and the blue, on that bell curve there, the 5 percentage points that were increased in the green and the 3 in the blue, That's the 8 percentage points that were increased into that on grade level, which is green, and the above grade level, which is blue. And then the 12 percentage points from the 10 percentage points from the 8 from the red, which is 2 years or more below grade level, and the 2 percentage points from the orange, which is between 1 and 2 years below grade level. We want the red and the orange to be decreasing. We want that blue and that green to be increasing. We want more numbers going into those colors. All right, this looks a little different than what you've probably seen in the past, and I'm going to try my best to explain it as coherently as possible. If you look top left-hand corner, I know it's hard to see for audience members. I believe board members have it in their packets. Top left-hand corner, you will see that shows the growth of our students. That green block shows the nearly 35% of our students that increased at least 1 grade level in half a year, okay? The 2 yellow bar graphs there, that shows the decrease. The first set shows the decrease in students below grade level. So we went from 80% below grade level to 69% below grade level. Then the decrease in students 2 years below grade level is the next set of yellow bar graphs. That went from, and I'm realizing I do need glasses up here now, 38% to 25%, went from 38% to 25%. So we want to see those decreases. Now we have this in the middle. You see there's the green and then you see the blue arrow there. We're going to use the blue arrow as our starting point, okay? The number next to that blue arrow is 522. If you go all the way to the left, you'll see it says 1 year below, okay? That tells us that the 522 students, these are matched pairs. This whole slide is about matched pairs. I failed to mention. This entire slide is about students who took the test in the fall and the winter. So if they were here in the fall, but they weren't here in the winter, they're not represented here. If they were here in the winter, but not in the fall, they're not represented here. So this only represents students that are matched pairs. So 522, look at the blue arrow there, 522 of them were below grade level, 1 year below, in the fall, okay? Because the rows represent the first test, the first time taken, and the columns represent the second time the test was taken. So the blue arrow pointing to 522, those students were 522 of them were below grade level. And now during the second administration this past winter are now on grade level. So that's how you read this particular chart. So anyone in green went up a band. And these students in white certainly could have raised their scores. They just didn't move into a different band, meaning they didn't go from below to on or on to above. Those in yellow did go down a band. So that's how we read that particular chart. All right, and I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Dr. Jen.
Thank you, Supervisor Tousignant. As we move into the grade 9-12 work, again, we see the bell curve and the shifts that we have seen in student performance between where we were in the fall and where we are in the winter. Again, you will see that there are trends moving in the positive direction in both the green and the blue with an increase of 5%. And we'll notice a decrease of 5% in the red and the orange and the yellow. Again, we see that the trend is moving in a positive way. to this chart for secondary schools for 9-12. We start at the bottom again, as Ms. Tusignant so eloquently explained. Students who were a year or more below in the fall within the column were 120 that now are on grade level. So again, you're looking to cross-reference this matched pair, this cohort, and remember that these are based on end-of-year targets. The rows, again, being at the beginning of the year, the first time students are taking the assessment, and the columns, again, are the middle of the year. So we continue to see a decrease in students that are performing below grade level at the top middle, yellow bar graph, and also a decrease in students who are performing 2 or more years below grade level. Again, we seek to close that achievement gap by having students make what's sometimes referred to as that invisible growth above and beyond 1 year. We do see that students are making growth, that there is still approximately 50% of our high school students without a change, and then we did see a drop of 21%. Here we see our average changes in the grade level equivalency that Supervisor Tusignant spoke to earlier from fall to winter. You'll notice anywhere in green that students are making the projected growth level. For example, in grade 2, students began the year on average of 1.5, and at the winter grade level equivalency, they are at grade level 2, which means they are at grade level. So you can read down this chart and see what the trend is. Starting in the bright green, moving into the light green, into the yellow, into the orange, and then into the red. So we do see that students who took the assessment in high school, 9th grade made a little gain of 0.2, 10th and 11th grade were flat, and 12th grade showed a slight increase as well. Again, just to note that 11th and 12th graders were not required to take this assessment from the district, that this was more of what we were expecting in 3-10. So this growth measure data shows us the percentage of students at each performance level for the middle of the year by grade level. This breaks it down a little further. And anywhere that you see green, it means that the data are trending in a positive direction. We want to see green. Yellow shows us that the data is statistically, there's not enough statistical significance to show a change, that it remains unchanged. And the red data is trending in a more negative way. So as you look across the data by grade level, again, grades 3 through 10, you can notice at first glance, we are seeing more green. We are seeing that students are trending, again, in a positive direction from that beginning of year to middle of year. I do want to draw your eye that the data are presented in a way that middle of year in the white column comes before beginning of year. So that change in that colored column there is about what happened from fall to winter. We additionally take a look at subgroup population data to again notice what is trending. The same applies. The cells highlighted in green mean that the data are trending in a positive direction, while the red means that the data is trending in a negative direction, and yellow means that it is statistically unchanged. As you can see from the majority of green, many subgroups are trending in a positive direction, showing growth in areas of language usage and comprehension. The growth measure measures both of these things. It's not just reading comprehension, but also language usage. There are positive data points around the red areas. So we continue to question and wonder, as you will hear in a few minutes, about what additional data may be necessary to dig in and find out more information about why data are trending in the red. We also give the Spanish growth measure in grades 3 through 9. Again, please notice that the first bar graph is middle of year data and the second bar graph is beginning of year data. So the most recent data is first on your page if you are reading this data from left to right. And you can see that the red bar is decreased from beginning of year to middle of year. Approximately 67.2% of students at the beginning of the year were more than 2 years behind, while 51.7% that decrease from fall to winter. Additionally, you can notice by the way it's outlined up top that we had at the beginning of year 26 students who were on grade level, and that has increased to 96 students at the middle of year. So again, we are seeing positive trends in the growth measure that is given in Spanish. So finally, as Dr. Negron has articulated to our leadership team, we know that data are only as useful as what we do with it. We know as a team we have a responsibility to dig deeper into this data and find out more about what our students are needing in terms of literacy and reading and writing achievement. We think about what we might need, what we might question, and what our next steps may be. And additionally, what diagnostic assessments may be necessary to give us the information we seek. I can speak on behalf of Supervisor Tousignant and myself that our why is not satisfied. We have more to learn about student learning, and there's multiple ways that we've already engaged in this work in collaboration with the academic team under the leadership of Assistant Superintendent Red Hannons. As mentioned earlier, we are engaging in walkthroughs at both the K-8 and the high school level. We work closely as an academic team and with our school-based teams to give actionable feedback on what we see and identify highlights and also areas of growth based on evidence-based practices that are indicated in our high-quality indicators of instruction here at New Haven Public Schools. We also look forward to seeing how the K-5 HMH program is currently being implemented, and also what are the needs within the 612 curriculum as we engage in a review of practice. We also find this an incredible opportunity for the newly appointed literacy leadership team to be an anchor and calibrator with our building level teams. We believe in teamwork, we believe in shared responsibility, and it's through this work that we're able to calibrate our thinking about high quality instruction. We also are highly focused on planning targeted small group work within core. We know that students need something different within core classroom practice. We are committed to the acceleration of literacy learning through small group work. And that may not be what is most comfortable for some of our secondary teachers, but I assure you with commitment that we will be seeing small targeted group work in Tier 1 in all grade levels K-12. Our elementary colleagues are masters at this work. We also are committed to empowering our coaches, both our building coaches and our district level coaches. Jen T and I have been prioritizing the work with them around science of reading practices that STEM K-12. We know that foundational piece is key to success, but in addition to that, we also know that that vocabulary and word work is completely necessary for secondary students. Building that word and world knowledge is critical to their academic success. We are committed and dedicated to the coaching team. We will work in collaboration with Supervisor Joyner to outline high quality coaching practices so that we may activate that teacher leadership in our buildings. We meet with the literacy coaches at the district level regularly and are incredibly proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish with this team so far. We want to empower our teachers. Thank you.
Before we go with the math, because we want to take it all as a whole and take questions at the end, I do want to reiterate that there is a positive trend in our literacy data from fall to winter according to our internal assessments. But we have to be very cautious to get overly excited about the progress because these outcomes do not necessarily mean that it's going to translate into the outcomes that we hope to see in our high stakes assessment, which is the Smarter Balance. It hasn't been like directly correlated. So it is new assessments, right? It's the first time we're doing it. But right now we're extremely pleased with what we're seeing. We will continue to dig in and further those wonderings. But again, I just wanted to put that word of caution. I don't want people to say, hey, you went up, so how come you're not going up in Smarter Balance? That is yet to see. So now I want to invite our supervisor on math, Monica Joyner, to also walk you through the outcomes that we're seeing from fall to winter in our math assessments.
Good evening, everyone. So for math, we are also trending in the right direction. The best thing about color is that even if you can't see the numbers because they're quite small, you can recognize that the green is growing and the red is getting smaller. So that is what we want to see. If you go to the next slide, I forgot about that one. So just so that you know, let me give you a little bit of background about what iReady Classroom Mathematics is. I want everyone to be clear that this is a program. It is not something that is just computer-based that we put in front of kids and it teaches the children. That is not what happens. iReady is a fully developed program that actually just recently, as of March 7th, became the only classroom K-8 program to receive a perfect score from EdReports in the areas of focus and coherence, rigor in mathematical practices, and usability. And what that means is it's direct alignment to the Common Core state standards of mathematics. It received a perfect score across the board in the only curriculum resources that has received that particular designation. So when we're talking about growth right now, we're talking about typical growth and stretch growth. Typical growth is what we expect our students, how we expect our students to grow over the course of 1 year. Stretch growth is them going beyond 1 year of growth. So it's pretty obvious that if a student starts the year 3 grade levels behind and they grow 1 year, they're going to remain 3 grade levels behind. So what we want and what we need to see is those students attaining their stretch growth goal over a period of at least 2 years. And that is a better indicator of them getting on their particular grade level. So our goal as a district is to have 35% of our students achieve their stretch growth. Last year, we had 23% of students achieve their stretch growth. So this year, our aim is for stretch growth because we figure if you go for stretch growth, you'll end up with your typical growth. So that is what our aim is right now. Next slide. Oh. So on this slide, you can see that from fall to winter, the 10,757 students that were assessed both times, at the beginning of the year, we had 8% who started the year early on to above grade level, and that has grown to 24%. In the yellow is 1 grade level below, that has increased 5%. And the good thing about that 5% increase is that when we look at 2 grade levels below, that has decreased 6%, and 3 grade levels below has decreased 8%. So those students have moved into the yellow and the green. The next 2 slides will show you specifically grades K-5 and 6-8. Our program, we're in the 3rd year of implementation K-5 and the 1st year of implementation of 6-8. Last year, we did a pilot of Envisions in iReady, and we selected iReady as our curriculum resource. So this year is the 1st year that all of our schools are implementing the iReady resource K through 8th grade. You can skip. That one again just shows our 6-8. Even though they're in their 1st year, the green is increasing, the red is decreasing, and that is exactly what we want to see. How long are students spending on personalized instruction? One particular aspect of the iReady curriculum is personalized instruction called MyPath. And what happens is once the students take the diagnostic, the system assesses where they need to target some instruction, where they need some specific things done. So our goal, iReady's goal, is for students to get 30 to 49 minutes of MyPath instruction in the course of a week and maintain 70% passing rate. If you look at the bottom, that is the passing rate for all of our students. 8. Decided. Can you still hear me? Okay. We have decided that we want our students to be on MyPath 50 minutes a week with an 80% passing rate. The only 2 grades that fall below 80% are kindergarten and 8th grade. 8th grade is at 79%, so they're right there. In kindergarten, we can kind of expect that and that they would have the least amount of time on the program because it's a computer-based program and it's a little bit more difficult to get our kindergarten kids on the program. However, they're still surpassing iReady's expectation of 70% passing rate. So all of our kids K-8 are surpassing that. This is my favorite chart to show, and I wish I had a pointer and could point things out exactly for you. If you look at the one on the left is last year and the one on the right is this year. Look at the darker area. You see where the 50 is? The 50 is the 50% progress towards typical growth. By the middle of the year, if we expect a kid to progress 100% towards typical growth by the end of the year, our expectation would be that they hit the 50% mark by the middle of the year. If you look on that left where the 50 is, we have quite a few schools. All those dots represent schools in our district. We have quite a few that have surpassed that 50 mark, and the 60 line is the national norm. The 60 line is the national norm that 60% of students have 60% progress towards their typical growth by the middle of the year. That bottom left column is low performance, low growth. If you go up, it's low performance, high growth. To the right is high performance, high growth. And below that is high performance, low growth. We want to move our students from that first lower left-hand column up and over to the right. Rise over run. We want their slope to move. We want them to move into high performance, high growth. So if you recognize last year, we had 1 school that was in that high performance, high growth area. And we have 9 schools that were in below the 50% mark. If we move over to the right, even without me saying anything, it's pretty clear that we have more of our schools that have moved into that upper left-hand column, which is although the performance is not as high as we want it, the growth is high. And that's what we need. The more our kids grow, the more they're going to get into the spaces that we want them to be. And you'll recognize that there are 2 schools now that are in the high performance, high growth area. So last year we had 9 schools that were in section 3. This year we only have 5. So we're moving and we're going to work on those 5. So one of the things when I get to next steps, I'll just say it now, is that we have planned some targeted intervention and targeted support for those 5 schools between now and the end of the year, and to help them start planning for next year. Particular one is quite interesting because what it shows us is, look on the left, first column is where students started at the beginning of the year. So if you notice, let's go to the bottom, 3 or more grade levels below. There's nothing under K, nothing under 1, because you can't be 3 or 4 grade levels below, 3 or more grade levels below there. But from 3rd grade on, you'll see the dark blue. Dark blue represents that you are 50% or more towards meeting your stretch growth goal. Your typical growth goal. So what we want is to see dark blue. The more dark blue we see, the better we're doing. The light blue means you're 40 to 49%. So you're almost there, but not quite. So we have a little bit of work to do. The gray means that you have gone, you're 30 to 39% towards your typical growth goal. Those who are 3 or more grade levels, 2 or more are all dark blue. So those kids, we've been paying quite a bit of attention to them, and we're moving all of them up. If you go to 1 grade level below, that's we start to see blue. So everyone except for 2nd and 4th grade has got that 50% or more, and their 2nd and 4th grade are in the 40s, 42 and 47. But when we look at the students who started in the green at the beginning of the year, those who were early on grade level or mid or above grade level, that's where we start to see some light gray. So what that says to me is that those students have not necessarily gotten the attention that they need in order for them to move further. So we kind of take it for granted when kids are at or above grade level, oh, they're fine. We need to focus and provide these interventions to those kids who are behind. So that lets me know that we need to do some work to make sure that we tighten up our tier 1 instruction so our kids who start on grade level are given the attention that they need so that they can excel and move beyond. The good thing about it is if you see the number below, for example, let's look at 4th grade, that says the number is 33. So that means there are 33 4th grade students across the district who started early on grade level who've met 30, I can't even read what that number percent towards their growth target. We can specifically identify those students in their schools, and then their coaches can work with their teachers to work with those students to get them what they need from now to the end of the year. So that's one of the great things about this, that the numbers are relatively small for us to work through when we're talking about across the district. So we do have some celebrations. We have a 9% increase of students who are early on or mid or above grade level. That's 900 students who have increased their placement. 34% decrease in students 2 or more grade levels below. So that means 1,540 students have moved up a grade level. The district median for the mid-year of percentage gain towards their typical growth is 60%. Last year, we were at 50%. So we're doing better than that this year. 31% of our students have already met their typical growth goal. That means those students are likely going to hit their stretch growth goal, which, as I said, our target as a district is 35%. Last year, it was 23% that met that. We have currently 9% of students that have already met their stretch growth goal. That's huge, that by the middle of the year, you've already met your stretch growth goal that's for the end, or that's hoped for the end of the year. Last year was 6%. We combine just those two, that 31 and 9, we can anticipate that probably about 40% of our kids are going to meet their stretch growth goal. That's what we can hope for and anticipate. And our average weekly MyPath minutes is beyond, it's within the average. So next steps. Like I already mentioned, that we are putting in place support for the 5 schools who demonstrated the least amount of, and what that's of those grades or those classes, because we can drill all the way down to classes. Which classes are showing the least amount of growth? So we have people from iReady coming in to plan with those teachers, do lessons with those teachers. Then the coaches and the administrators will observe, make sure everything is implemented in their planning. Ready will come back and go through this process again. And then that last, how they've improved, and then plan with the coach and with the administrators for next year. We're digging into the 4th grade data. 4th grade across the district is the area that seems to have some of the smallest. There are schools in the district, though, that are having phenomenal growth at 4th grade. And with those particular teachers is my K-5 is going in. She's videotaping those teachers, teaching lessons. And then with our district walkthroughs, once we identify someone who's doing great work, I say, Courtney, you got to go out to see this particular teacher. We have to, because we're building up a library of our teachers doing good work with our students, so that when we have professional development and we show videos, it's not those videos from Iowa hand that people can say, well, those aren't our kids. We're using our own teachers, our own students doing the work who are showing good gains in their class. So if we go to another school where there's a fourth grade teacher who's not doing as well, now we have a person, hey, we talk to the administrator so that they can go over and observe this teacher and meet with this teacher. One of the things that we're finding out across the board, we got a group of teachers together who are doing exceptional work and their kids are showing great gains. We got them together to put together a presentation for the rest of our teachers to say, what is it that you're doing? What is it that's working for you? So that the information that's going to go out to the rest of the teachers comes from them. And what happened across the board, what came with every single question is that it all boiled down to planning. When you plan well, iReady has tons of resources. They have enough resources that in small groups and tell you what it is that these groups of kids need and give you a link to the resources that you can use to support those students. If you plan well, then you put your small groups together, and while you're working with your small groups, you've got a group of kids who can then be on My Path if you need them to, getting their My Path minutes and getting the personalized instruction that they need. The difference is those people who just kind of go in and say, oh, it's already in there, let me just use this, and they just start using it without paying for it, they're not showing as much success. So it comes down to planning. Teachers are sharing that. We have conducted math data chats after the mid-year. Already consultant and district coach go out to this is what we should be doing for the year. And supporting our middle school teachers. Middle school teachers is where the rubber meets the road, and they are brand new at the moment. It's not on at all. So I think it's working because it wanted me to stop talking. So I will simply say that we have plans. We're using that mid-year data. We're talking to our teams, to our administrators, and to our coaches to get the best that we can in front of our students. And I'm going to turn this back over to Ms. Keisha Red-Handed.
Thank you. Okay.
Before Keisha comes, I just want to highlight that because Monica Joyner called attention to the fourth grade data, please remember that the fourth grade students were the most impacted. These are the students whose kindergarten grade was interrupted when schools had to shut down in March. It means their whole first grade year also was significantly impacted. I just wanted to call that out.
And so, and thank you, Dr. Negron. In summary, we're happy. We're pleased to see that we're trending in the right direction, but we are not complacent. Team, just in case there's questions, but we are not complacent. We have a lot more work to do. We met with our principals and assistant principals. We shared the data with them, and we told them this is not a time to take your foot off the gas pedal. It's actually a time to rev it up even more. And so we will continue to go into schools. We will continue to provide feedback. That is the Office of Academics, that is Dr. Negron, that is the other assistant superintendents as well, because we want to wrap our arms of support around our staff, our students, so that we can continue to see our data trending in the right direction. With that said, I'll turn it over to Dr. Negron for last word.
No, I want to open it up for any questions. We have
Questions or comments, Dr. Joyner?
First of all, let me commend the team for that outstanding report. It has generated a whole lot of questions for our next TNL meeting. One of the, and bear in mind that we need to create the policy that makes it easier for you to do your work in the building. And so that's what we're going to be trying to do, Ms. Red-Handed, to look at the policy implications for all of the stuff that we've heard today. I think Dr. Negron made a great comment when she qualified some of the scores by indicating the conditions that those particular kids were under. And that's something that we cannot forget, that many of our children come to school without the requisite behavior that they need in order to excel, and it's really up to us to do that. For the first time, we got a report on high schools in reading. I don't think we've ever gotten that before. And I'm going to have some questions because a great intervention that does not cost a lot is independent reading, required independent reading, which can be a policy initiative. And then in terms of the math, I was at Troop with Dr. Negron when I already honored one of our teachers. And I'll leave it to Dr. Negron to explain all of that to you. But I got a chance to look in on some of the math classes. I have never seen, except for at Jackie Robinson Middle School, when I was there, I have never seen such engagement rate in the classroom. I didn't see a single kid that was not engaged in the work. And time is the currency of change. And if you can get these kids to engage in academic learning in an efficient way, we'll continue to build the kind of scholars that actually are right here in the room that you're in. You have Keisha Red-Hannis, who graduated from Hill House and Jackie Robinson. You have Andrea O'Donnell, who graduated from Jackie Robinson and Hill House. You have your board president, who graduated from Career High School. And so clearly our district can educate kids. And I have never been more excited than I am tonight about the way in which you presented the data. Some of it took me a time to get through, but I'm really impressed. And I would ask you to, one, figure out whether or not we can do an iReady equivalent in some of the content areas like history and PE and what have you, because that is a really great program. That whole team was there to support the teacher, Mr. Jett, who was honored by them. And he's one of 22 teachers that were honored across the country for that work. And it looks like we're going to go from iReady to We Ready. and that's what we'd like to see. So I'm not going to take up any more time, but I wrote these questions down. Ms. Anna, I'm going to send them to you ASAP so that we can create our agenda. And I'd like to commend the 3 people who did the presentations, the 2 Jens and the 1 Monica. Thank you so much for your hard and dedicated work.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Wilcox?
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. Greatly appreciated and appreciated the data. I know that it represents the work not only of you on your teams, but also probably a couple hundred teachers and other staff members, and of course, the work of the thousands of students that this represents. So thank you for that. And I think it's just a great testament that when we are funded and able to invest in resources like new curriculum and the training that goes with it, and to get everybody on the same, so to speak, that we start to see the advances and that other districts see as well. So I just want to thank you for demonstrating that when we invest, we see results. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Okay. See no further questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you to the
I have a
team.
comment.
Oh, Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, one, want to say I appreciate the growth that has occurred. Many thanks to the teachers, the students, the parents, and families that contributed to our students continuing to grow and excel. And I also want to say thank you for the presentation of the data. One, that you have data. So thank you very much for having it, collecting it, presenting it, and just the walkthrough. It was very calm. It was very clear. I appreciated how you pointed out and drew my eyes' attention to where I should focus as you were explaining what to look at and how to measure and see where there was growth and where there was not growth. And lastly, I also appreciate what was mentioned in terms of trying to ask additional questions to find out additional answers, particularly towards how to help students who are growing to grow more and faster, and also for the students who may have stagnated, how to dig in and see what supports may be provided for them. As somebody who was middle of the class, I do appreciate when attention goes to the middle of the class, so to speak, so that everyone can continue to grow and elevate. So thank you very much for just all that you pointed out. And I'm sure the many things that you did not mention that have also caught your attention and you'll pay more attention to. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Dr. Negron?
So, Mr. Wilcox, I appreciate your comment because I intentionally put these two presentations together. I know we've been here for a long time, but I'm hoping that we can sort of stay focused. It was a way to show that we've been very diligent in focusing on our work, which is to increase student achievement and honing in on the core academics of literacy and numeracy, at least in this occasion, but also to highlight that these have been areas that have had significant investments that were made possible through the federal grants. And now I would like to invite my Chief Financial Officer, Linda Hannans, who is going to be presenting where our proposal for the 24-25 budget. So with that, I'm gonna leave you with Chief Hannans, and Christine Bourne is also going to be supporting the presentation.
Good evening. Dr. Negron took the words right out of my mouth because I was going to say that about that this was one of our investments that we used our ARP ESSER money, and as you can see, it's paying off. Okay. Good evening, President Rivera and members of the board. We come before you tonight to share the 24-25 proposed general fund budget. As we go through the proposed general funds budget, we will give you some background and information on the district strategic plan for 2024, which speaks to the core values, the mission, and the vision of the district, along with the 5 core values. We'll talk about our objectives of our budget. We'll talk about our schools at a glance. We're going to show you some historical enrollment. We're going to talk about some key trends that we're seeing. We're also going to show you our 24-25 initial budget projection, our revenue assumptions. We're going to talk about our proposed budget, our estimated expenses, our notable cost drivers, and some new items that we included in the budget. We will also present our budget calendar, and then I will end with my final thoughts. So if we turn to slide number 2, which is, the strategic plan, and this is what outlines our core values, our mission, and our vision. The district is currently updating the strategic plan for 24, and we will be going forward together, striving towards the next chapter of excellence. On slide number 4, it talks about outlines our budget. And you have to excuse me because I have new contacts in. But our outlines our budget objectives, which are to create and implement a transparent budget, which attempts to promote equity and reflects the true cost of running the district. Page 5 shows the diverse populations that we serve. During our October 1 enrollment, we have 19,268 students. Of those students, 21.1% were multilingual learners, 15.7 students were with disabilities, 75.2% are economically disadvantaged, and 2.63 are homeless. Also, we have 77 students which speak, we have, 77 different languages are spoken in our district as well. If you look at page 6, Slide 6, this slide just talks about our funding streams and how they can be very different. So we have 21 Title I schools, we have 1 Commissioners Network school, we have 5 Title I SIG schools, and then we also, on this list also, you would see which schools are the neighborhood schools, which schools are the magnet schools. We also have 1 school, which is the Sound School, which is the aquaculture school, I'm sorry. On slide 7, we are showing the historical data with the peak being the year 2017. And then you see from there, you'll start seeing the decline over time. And this slide here is very important because what it does, it shows you, with the ARP ESSER and all the other grants, we were like, if you look in the middle, the grants went way up, and then now they're starting to decline with the grants ready to sunset on September 30th of 2024. So this is a significant decrease in our funding. On page 8, we're showing just the ECS, where it has remained stagnant over the years at 142.5. All additional funds that we received were added to the Alliance grant with the stipulations that they must be for new initiatives. On page 9, you'll see a change in the grant funds from $96.7 million in 2016 to over $200.3 million due to COVID, ESSER, and ARP funding. In fiscal year 22-23, we're starting to see a decline as the funds are being spent as planned, with the final ARP ESSER funds due again to sunset on September 30th. Our grant funds for 2024-25 are currently projected to be $97.6 million. On the page 10, we're showing the relation to the previous grant. This chart shows the decline in grant revenues by grant type. So if you go down the list, the first list, it was the prior year funding. And of the second column, it shows you the funds that were rolled over. And keep in mind that the grant cycle for grants is not like the city cycle, but we do follow the city cycle. But so for that, I mean, what happens is that if we have money left over in June 30th, and we have a grant that doesn't end until September or the following June 30, that's where you'll see the money will be then rolled over into the carryover year. On slide 11, it shows you how the schools are funded by various sources. And it's important to note on this pie chart that we are still relying on heavily on our state and federal and private grants. Right now, we're at 49%. Looking at that chart, so we're losing grants, as you can see. I think last year we were like at 51%. On slide number 12, our initial projection for this fiscal year for going forward will be 8.27 increase, which includes all of our contractor requirements and our proposed new items. And then we also built in a 3% reduction. So what we did there is we actually took a look at the budget and see, well, what could we basically move around, take out, and we've done some other things trying to get this budget manageable, but knowing that we need to actually report what we're really looking at. I would hate to present a budget and then later on I come back and I say, oh my God, we didn't put everything in there. So that's why this budget looks as it does right now. On page 13, we have just the revenue assumptions. So you can see over the years, we just did a chart to show you where we are and where ECS is and where I think it's the mayor's, not the mayor's, I'm sorry, the governor's proposed budget is up there as well. If we, I think on the edge, and please excuse me for these numbers, but on the edge, it shows the reduction of the governor's budget. And it also shows a reduction, I think, in the magnet grant. I think we lost about $400,000 there for next fiscal year. Okay, on page 14 is the actual budget slides, and I'm going to ask Christine to come up and speak about that. Oh, you're behind me. Okay.
Should have put your glasses off the desk for you. So this slide, the first column, the green column, is what we're operating under right now and the allocations that the board made for this year's operations. The second column is the requirements, the contractual increases for staff, for personnel, for the bus transportation. The third column is where we did some adjustments because we did want to include the superintendent and administrators' wish lists. So there has been a slight reduction in some of those categories. For staff, it would be attrition, people retiring, hiring less expensive staff. We did not take money away from instructional supplies, utilities, or maintenance, as those are very limited. As you can see, those are small items in the budget. So that is that slide. This is where they're allocated in the pie chart. So full-time personnel is 56.3%. Those are administrators, teachers, supervisors, clerical, management, custodians, security, those types of staff. Part-time, 2.1%. Coaches, substitutes, hourly employees, summer staff. Instruction, 12.9%. Software, textbooks, supplies, furniture, students' activities, tuition. That's a big piece of that. Transportation, 14.9%. That's mileage, daily transportation out of district, homeless, field trips, outplacement, that type of transportation. Plant operations, 6.5%. That's utilities, building supplies, custodial supplies, cleaning, moving, and on-call contracts. And other, 7.3%, is conferences, workshops, uniforms, in-service, parent activities, legal, and then our bigger contracts like Frontline, Power School, and those types of things. We wanted to show you this, that the percentage of what takes up the budget is significantly personnel. The next slide is what we're operating on this year and the percentages. And what is interesting in the comparison of the two is that instruction percentage, operation of plant percentage is slowly decreasing as far as taking up the funding that we receive. So we're decreasing in the areas that we really want to move forward. And that supports the request that we're asking.
I'm going to now refer to Dr. Negron, who is going to talk to us about this slide and how it relates to our plans going forward into the future.
So in this image here, I wanted to capture some of the work that we want to make sure that we continue to do. So you see here in the middle is my attempt to showcase a student. But we want to continue to provide with the high quality teaching and learning that we've been able to accomplish thus far related to the curriculum materials that we have been bringing in, as long as making sure that we also have the teaching staff that we need, particularly around the influx of students that we have received, in particular in some of our schools. So those investments are reflected there. Under academic support, these is additional support that we need to bring in to continue to do the work of interventions, but also the support that we're bringing to our teachers so that they can continue to better meet the needs of our students. There was a public comment earlier today around the importance of things such as social emotional learning. So those are things that I have there embedded in this space here, reflected as mental health supports. I want to make sure that we continue to bring those supports such as school counselors, school psychologists that are needed to continue to make sure that our students' needs are addressed so that they have the conditions necessary to continue to do the academic learning. Followed by investments that we need to continue to make to ensure that we are establishing two-way partnerships with our families, and so that we can provide better communication, resources that we are making available to them, and to continue the work that you heard me speak of when I first arrived, addressing the Chamber of Commerce. But we want to make sure that we strengthen and expand and support our career pathways and the work that we're doing related to college readiness. So that is what you have referenced there on the college and career pathways. And last but not least, ensuring that our students are in safe learning environments. So here we're talking about needs related not only to the tradesmen that we need to continue to tend to our facilities, but also continuing to invest in our security guards to make sure that we have ample security in our buildings. So this is, and again, an attempt to hone in into some of the new investments that I'm hoping we will be able to do with this ask that we are making in our proposed general education budget. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Chief Hannons again.
Okay, mitigation, notable cost drivers. Okay, so if you look at this slide here, this slide basically talks about the cost drivers that are driving the budget that we are currently presenting. And as you can see, 86% of the general fund costs are personnel, out-of-district tuition, and transportation. And then essentially all of our full-time staff are in collective bargaining agreements. And for the 4 largest bargaining units, the following contractual changes are in place for the 24-25. So you could see the teachers, the administrators, paraprofessionals, we're still in negotiations. And then management, we have no step movement, but they got 3% gross wages. All other salary changes are to be negotiated. We still have the substitute teachers to negotiate. And also our transportation contract renewal from starting July 1, 2024. And I think it's an anticipated increase of 3%. Christine, correct me if I'm right. Okay. Yep. And then price escalation is spelled out in our long-term agreements and contracts, which are building maintenance, tuition, and other areas. And I think that's, okay, this slide here, we just wanted to show you for 23-24, where we are right now as of January 31st, 24, and it's showing that our projected deficit was $4 million. And the reason why I wanted to show this is because we are actively looking at purchase orders, everything that comes in the building. We are basically looking to make sure that we can reduce this deficit as much as we can. I think last month it was like 5.8 it was on it. So the team, which is Christine and I, but we're actually looking at everything to reduce this down, and we will continue to bring it. And we will continue to work on bringing this deficit down. Okay, and finally, our mitigation efforts. And while we continue to use many of the mitigation strategies that we utilized last year using different funding, ARP, ESSER, and grants that allowed us to ask for indirect cost rate, we continue to struggle to fully eliminate the projected deficit as well as the projected deficit going forward. We have reprogrammed our unspent grant funds to cover needs where applicable. We continue to review all requests for hire to make sure that we're just not hiring everybody at $100,000, but to really look at the need and the positions. We have also continued to monitor requests at all new grant applications that allow indirect costs to be included in the application. The bad news with this one, though, is that our rate has always been 6.25 because of COVID and the changes in state employees and just people retiring before their last contract. So what happened is that they finally come around to working on the new indirect cost rate. And so we've gone down to basically 1% on that. We've gone down to 5.25. And we're looking at that going down further because unfortunately, when we received all of these grants, it does affect the indirect cost rate because you can't use the grant expenditures as part of the calculation. We also continue to utilize ARP ESSER funds to cover costs through an extent where we got an extension. So we're still using paras as substitutes, bus monitors, extra cleaning, the after-school programs, the custodial and security overtime. And that is the custodian overtime, I must admit, is being driven by the
It's dying, no.
Yay. Thank you. Let's see. So we are out of executive session, back in regular session. There were no votes in executive session and no action to be taken at this moment. And so should we continue with the presentation, the budget presentation?
Okay, just a few more slides. And the only slides that were outstanding were the budget timeline slides, which talks about the timelines and where we are. And don't touch it, it might stop working again. Budget timelines, and then the last slide should be what we don't know. And with that, we have the grant funding, especially with the respect to the Alliance grant by statute. All future increases in ECS must come through the Alliance grant. The effect, also, we don't know the effect that declining enrollment will have on grants, costs due to unfunded mandates, increased costs for healthcare and other benefits, impact of inflation on goods and services, and I'm sure we've all seen that, and then increasing costs of special education services and outplacement. And then finally, it's just my final thoughts. The award to New Haven of ESSER 1, 2, and ARP ESSER grants have been extremely helpful as we design robust academic and other improvements for our students. However, ESSER 2 was similar to Title I and had the same restrictions on not supplanting expenses in the existing general fund budget. The $80 million award for the ARP ESSER funds were a little bit more flexible, and we continue to utilize those funds to the extent allowable. ARP ESSER funds, though, however, will sunset on to September the 30th, 2024. Due to the increased costs mentioned early and the decrease in grant revenue, we will still face a projected deficit for next year. We would need to explore new sources of funding opportunities as well as continuing the challenges to close the gap. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Hannans. Questions or comments for Ms. Hannans? Dr. White, or Dr. Yarber and Dr. Joyner on? Okay, just making sure. Okay, Dr. Joyner?
No, I didn't have my hand up. I just want to let you know I was on.
Okay, okay. I couldn't see you. Okay, thank you.
All right,
thank you.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yeah, I had a just a question. So action is not needed tonight. This is just telling us where things are, or is the need for us to approve this draft budget proposal so that it can go on to the next steps of going to the public and to the alders for more approvals?
So if there are no questions, I do ask for,
I have a question. So I guess.
I had other questions. I was just wanting to, no worries. I just wanted to, I wanted to get clarification, and I had one or two comments. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
again, if there are no questions, I am recommending then for approval so that we can continue with the process.
Okay, so, and I'm in support of this budget proposal. This is, I think, the third time I've seen it, because we also saw two draft presentations in Finance and Operations Committee meetings. So I'm happy to make a motion that we approve this. I move that we approve this draft proposal so that I can move on to the next steps.
there a second?
Second.
Probably seconded, discussion.
And then just to finalize, I do think that one thing that's striking to me, I appreciate the budget presentation. I know there's tremendous amount of work that goes into this, not only this, but also all the budget mitigation that has to happen because we're not fully funded to meet the needs. And I think one thing that, two things, one that I'd like to draw attention to is, one was on, I think it was slide 13, where it's mentioned that there are proposed changes in the governor's budget, which would reduce the money that people worked hard to get in to increase Alliance grant funding. Governor has good intentions, wants to use those funds to go from the K-12 part of things and do it into early childhood. And I'm in support of both early childhood and K-12. But then there's also going to be potential changes in the interdistrict magnet tuition rates, et cetera. So I think that there's those two things together, and I'm happy to see the numbers in here where it's, you know, $750,000 on top of if the governor is successful in reducing the things that people have been working towards. And I just think overall, the thing that's really missing here, and I recommend when this goes out in the future, that the other information about the staffing guidelines report is mentioned, because when I look at this budget, I see a lot of things that aren't here because we don't have equitable funding for schools in Connecticut. And if we were to use the numbers of like what Westport gets, are able to expend per person for their students, we would have more than $90 million in this budget based on what we're able to do the funding on. And obviously Westport's a much richer community, but that's why the state needs to be more equitable in their funding to meet the needs, because I can be pretty certain that if we go and look at the report cards for districts on this Department of Education site, we're going to see that other places that have better funded, richer communities don't have the high rates that we have of homeless students and high rates of language learners, et cetera. And so I just think I am very much appreciative of the superintendent's plans to try to chip away at a little bit of some of these gaps by adding some new positions to work on some targeted things. It's just unfortunate because we need dozens of those people. And if you want to have school climate that is conducive to learning, having the people that work on school climate in a building, in restorative practices and in-school suspension and coaches and others to work with students and be more adults in the building, that's what's missing in this. So I'm in support of this, and I would hope that the state would be able to step in, but I also understand as a New Haven taxpayer, my taxes, if this ask was to be fully funded, will be going up even more. But that's part of why I live in New Haven, is because I want to support New Haven schools and the diversity that we have and the wonderful students that I think we need to be supporting. So I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Ms. Downer?
First of all, Chief, I would like to say thank you for your efforts and, you know, just really displaying what we actually look like. I just have a quick question. I see the peer professionals in negotiation. Do you think that would drive the deficit more if that was to finish a negotiation, and by how much?
We have put a few dollars, but because we're in negotiations, I can't publicly say
Oh,
what
okay.
that number is going to be.
No problem. But there will be
And
an
we built it
increase
in.
to the 8. It's built in already?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Joyner? Thank you, Ms. Downer.
I want to say amen to what Matt just articulated. And I cannot live with myself if I didn't ask the board to draft a letter to the governor and to our delegation to raise all these issues. And I think that this is the kind of board would do that. Urban communities all over the country are beset with the idea that their property base cannot maintain public schools in the manner that they should be maintained, given the population that most urban schools serve. I worked with Elijah Cummings at one point when he was alive, because he heard me say in a speech at Johns Hopkins that urban schools may get the same amount of money, but they don't have as much left over for instruction because they have to pay too many other bills. So I would hope that we can draft a letter to the governor, let him know what our reality is, and try to impress upon him that we can't have any reductions. You know, our children are. I mean, you have kids that just got in the country. They can't speak the language. That's very different. And then, of course, they also have more illnesses and live in more difficult circumstances. And as a board, we ought to have something to say about that, because every year they come down here and they campaign and we vote for folks. And if we stick by them, they ought to stick by us. And in this case, I'm talking about the governor. So, Madam Chair, I'm asking that at some point we draft a letter that outlines a great deal of what Matt says, that documents the need that we have in the city, and that we send it to the governor and with copies to everybody else that has an influence over the appropriations for these children.
I agree, Dr. Joyner. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank the team, the assistant supers and all the principals that worked together. This was really a collaborative effort. We talked to people and we pulled all the information together. So, you know, we really spent a lot of time and effort into putting this budget together and making a true budget, knowing that our ESSER is going away and that we have to really look at other resources to continue all the good work that everyone has been doing and what Dr. Negron has been advocating. It's, you know, it's important. We don't want to lose this. And I've been in this job quite a long time, not in this one, but in the past. So I've seen when the budgets go up and I've seen when the budgets go down. And it's not a good feeling when you know you have to make choices. Well, are you going to let the kids go to school and pay, you know, are we going to buy them uniforms, or are we going to make them pay for after school sports and stuff? And I know we have to make some decisions on this budget because the money is going away. But I just feel, I mean, I really feel it personally. And as like Matt's doctor, he tells me call him Matt, I call him Mr. Wilcox, said, I too am a taxpayer in New Haven. And I've seen my taxes go up since I moved about 10 years ago. But believe me, it's worth it. It really is when you see what the kids in New Haven are getting. And, you know, you look at other places, but everything our kids get, they don't have to go in their pockets. We try to do for them, because you know what would happen? The kids that have would continue to get, and the kids that don't have would continue to get nothing. So I really appreciate your support and everyone's support that had a hand in this budget, including to Christine, who I drove crazy because I wake up in the middle of the night and I say, oh, we got to do this, you know, but we're still working on it. And hopefully as a team and as together, we can make this budget work. And I thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that conclude your report, Dr. Negron?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
I think we're supposed to vote.
Oh, that's right. We're voting.
Voting.
So we're voting to approve the proposed draft budget. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Abstain.
abstain, and I'm a yes as well. And so that item passes.
That was a classy move, Mayor Elicker.
I
Seriously,
know,
that was a classy move.
to abstain.
But you know what? That was a classy move. I want to put on the record. It was a classy move.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Okay, so really quick for a president's report, on March 4th, we had our board retreat. We discussed amongst other things, rights and responsibilities of the board members, freedom of information. There will be a day 2, which we're in the process of scheduling, and in that one, some of the topics will be board goals, superintendent goals, and the superintendent evaluation amongst maybe 1 or 2 other topics. Questions or comments about that? Okay, we'll move on to the Head Start report. Mr. Wilcox?
Actually, the next 3 reports we can do pretty quickly, especially Head Start. There's no update because our next meeting is March 21st. For Citywide, there's no update because our next meeting is this Thursday on March 14th. And for Finance and Operations, the next agenda will be posted on Friday. We had close to a 3-hour meeting again. Our last time, the minutes are in your packet and posted on the website. We heard in addition to transportation contract and budget update and the defining the gap staff guidelines that go into the number of staff that we would need to fund this, to do the work of the district in an equitable fashion. We also talked about a few other things that are there, and we will continue the conversations on our next meeting. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Questions or comments for Mr. Wilcox? Okay. And Dr. Benitez is not in. Did she pass along a report with anyone? No.
Actually, Ms. Downer, could you tell us what went down at governance? Because I thought she was going to start to work on some of those policies that we had sent.
Hey, we didn't have a meeting.
Okay, so
Okay,
where's
meeting
the
has
protocol?
been-
So where's the protocol? Where is that in the scheme of things? Policy.
Well, they haven't had a meeting yet.
But we haven't had a
Dr.
meeting
Joyner,
to decide on that.
Okay.
Because governance has monthly meetings. Yeah, okay. All right, that was our last slide. Oh, food service task group, Dr. Yarborough.
Thank you. We will meet.
We're getting
This
excited
month?
about the end.
I know. We will meet this month on Wednesday, March 13th, this Wednesday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions or comments for Dr. Yarborough? No, okay. And
Motion to adjourn?
is down.
Second, time well spent.
Oh, it's been seconded. We can't discuss anything now. Sorry. They could see it.
We have a motion on the table.
Yes, Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough? Sorry, I'm distracted over here.
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. The next governance meeting is May 13th. Thank you. Good night.
Take care.
March 13th, March